I stare at my phone, the glow of the Instagram app illuminating my face in the quiet of my small living room. There it is, the post I never thought would matter so much. Me leaning casually against a sleek silver Porsche 911, $186,000. A car I don't truly own, yet somehow it feels like armor. 3 months of silence from my son Marcus weigh on me like a physical presence, pressing my chest, tightening my throat. 47 unanswered texts, 12 voicemails, all begging for the same fragile connection, all ignored. I run my fingers over the glossy surface of my phone as if I could feel his hand reach back to mine through the glass. My heart flutters painfully. I've lived 35 years as a teacher, raising Marcus alone after my husband died when Marcus was only 8. I've poured every ounce of love, every sleepless night, every penny into giving him the life he deserved. And yet, the bond I cherished, the trust we had, it's fractured. Then, as if the universe finally hears the cry of a mother's heart, my phone rings. Marcus, son, I answer, trying to keep my voice steady, trying not to let hope shatter into disappointment. Mom, a Porsche? His voice is trembling, unrestrained. I miss you. Can we have lunch this Sunday? His excitement seeps through the phone like sunlight through storm clouds, and for a moment, my tears catch in my throat. Of course, sweetheart, I manage, my own voice shaking despite my efforts. Sunday at noon. I hang up and close my eyes, letting the tears fall freely. I feel relief and fear twist together, a knot of emotions that's been coiled in my chest for months. Relief because he's finally reaching out, because he wants me, and fear because I know the truth. Sunday won't just be lunch. It will be Judgment Day. I glance at the closet where I hide a cardboard box labeled evidence. Each item within is a fragment of secrets, lies, and truths carefully collected over months. Receipts, letters, photographs, small clues that piece together a narrative Marcus has never been privy to. The thought that Sunday will unveil everything, strip away facades, and confront the people who betrayed him fills me with a strange mixture of dread and determination. Outside, the Arizona sun is harsh, bright, and unforgiving. It seems to echo the weight I carry within, the same harsh clarity I need to muster for the days ahead. I remember Marcus as a boy, running to me with scraped knees, bright-eyed and full of dreams. I remember the nights we stayed awake together when he was sick, holding his small hand, whispering promises I thought I could keep forever. And now, at 47, he is my son still. But the innocence is gone, replaced by a man shaped by lies he has never known, manipulated by a woman who calls herself his wife. I walk to the window and look down at the street, imagining the coming Sunday. I can almost see him sitting across from me at a restaurant table, his smile cautious but hopeful, a mixture of love and confusion in his gaze. I can see the hesitation in his movements, the subtle guarding of his heart against someone I can't yet name as fully deserving of it. My phone buzzes again. A text from an unknown number lights up the screen. Kathleen, this is Detective Morrison. We need to talk about your daughter-in-law before Sunday. It's urgent. My hands tremble as I read the words. Detective Morrison. His name alone carries authority, danger, and the promise of truths too long buried. I swallow hard and feel my pulse quicken. My son's future, my own survival, and the fragile bond between us all hang by a thread. I take a deep breath, trying to steady myself, trying to remember that I am Kathleen Barnes, mother, teacher, survivor. I am a woman who has faced loss, fear, and uncertainty. I have stitched together a life from scraps of courage and love, and I will not crumble now. Not when the chance to reclaim my son, to reclaim justice, is so close. The phone sits heavy in my hand, a lifeline and a weapon at once. I know Sunday will not just change everything. It will reveal who we truly are. It will strip away pretense, expose deception, and either heal or destroy the bonds I have fought so hard to protect. As I sit back, I feel the familiar ache of loneliness that has shadowed me for months. But beneath it, a new determination stirs. I will face whatever comes. I will confront the lies, and I will protect my son, no matter the cost. For now, I allow myself one small smile. A mother's hope is stubborn, relentless. Marcus is reaching for me, and I will meet him halfway. Whatever storms Sunday brings, I am ready to face them, with courage, with love, and with the truth at my side. I am Kathleen Barnes, 60 years old, a teacher for 35 years, a mother who has carried more than her fair share of burdens, yet never allowed them to break me. I still remember my first day in the classroom, the scent of fresh pencils and chalk filling the air, the nervous excitement in the eyes of my students as they entered my classroom. Everyone called me the Sunshine Teacher, and I tried every day to live up to that name. To see the good in people, even when life had taught me how fragile the human heart can be. Raising Marcus alone after my husband died when he was only 8 shaped me in ways I'm still learning to understand. The grief was raw, slicing through me with the cruelty of a winter wind. But for Marcus, I could not allow myself to fall apart. I worked 2 jobs, teaching during the day, tutoring in the evenings, babysitting younger children for extra income, to send him to Stanford's MBA program. Every late night, every skipped meal, every exhausted morning, I reminded myself, this is for him. This is for the boy who deserved a future brighter than the one life had offered me. Time passed, and Marcus grew into a man I could be proud of, thoughtful, intelligent, ambitious, but still so sensitive, so easily manipulated by the people he trusted. 2 years ago, he married Jessica Thornton, a woman from one of Scottsdale's wealthiest families. I should have felt proud, exhilarated even, at the thought of him finding love and stability. Instead, I felt a knot of worry in my stomach, subtle at first, then growing with each passing week. I poured myself into planning the wedding. My life savings, $62,000 of my retirement fund, was gone in a matter of weeks, but I told myself it was worth it. Marcus deserved his dream wedding. He deserved to be happy. I believed that love could overcome any obstacle, that my sacrifices would be rewarded with the warmth of family and the joy in my son's eyes. And for a brief moment, they were. But the honeymoon period ended, as it always seems to. Marcus slowly disappeared from my life after the wedding. Small excuses became longer absences, missed phone calls, ignored texts. I chalked it up to work stress, adjustment, the complications of married life. But deep down, the unease lingered. I felt like I was watching my son drift into another world, a world where I was no longer welcome. And there was nothing I could do but wait, hope, and hold on to the bond we had forged through decades of shared hardship and love. Then, 3 months ago, the news that would have broken a lesser person arrived, a brain tumor. A diagnosis that shook me to my core. The fear of losing Marcus without ever having him know how much I needed him, how much I had sacrificed for him, haunted every waking moment. Surgery was inevitable. Recovery would be long. Yet I faced it with the quiet determination that had defined my life. I was Kathleen Barnes, resilient, cautious, and endlessly devoted to the people I loved. I called Marcus repeatedly, 47 messages, 12 voicemails, each one a careful, loving plea. I need you. I'm scared. Please, call me. But each day passed with nothing but silence. It felt like a betrayal more painful than any other I had endured. I couldn't understand it. The boy I raised, the man I had poured every ounce of myself into, had chosen absence over connection, indifference over compassion. And the weight of that reality crushed me. In the midst of this, something unexpected happened, something that changed everything. While sorting through Marcus's old room, the one untouched since he left for college, I found a small, folded envelope tucked behind a stack of his old textbooks. My hands shook as I unfolded it. The paper inside was delicate, filled with the familiar, careful handwriting of my son. Mom, if you're reading this, I'm sorry. Jessica made me choose. I chose wrong. I sat on the floor, the envelope trembling in my hands. The words hit me like a thunderclap. I had never felt such a complex mix of emotions. Relief that Marcus still cared enough to write, anger that someone had forced his hand, and grief for the lost months, the silence, the separation. My mind raced, piecing together the unseen threads of manipulation and deceit. Tears streamed down my face, each one a testament to years of sacrifices, sleepless nights, and unwavering love. I realized in that moment that everything I thought I knew about my family's dynamics had been distorted by someone else's lies. And yet, in that same moment, I felt a spark of hope. If Marcus could acknowledge the mistake, if he could recognize the choice he had been coerced into, then perhaps we could reclaim the bond we had lost. The letter was more than a note. It was a lifeline, a proof of the enduring connection between a mother and her child. It reminded me of why I had fought so hard all these years, why I had endured the sleepless nights and financial sacrifices. It reminded me that love, even when obscured by deceit, can find its way back. I tucked the letter safely into my bag, holding on to it as if it were a shield against the pain that had defined these last months. Sunday would come, and with it, the reckoning. But now, I felt prepared, not just as a mother fighting for her child, but as a woman ready to confront lies, reclaim truth, and face the challenges ahead with courage. Because the bond between Marcus and me had survived decades of trials, and it would survive this. The sun, ever constant over Phoenix, seemed to echo that quiet certainty. There was more to be revealed, more to be faced, but for the first time in months, I felt a sense of purpose, of direction, and so I waited, with hope stitched tightly to my heart, ready to face the storms that were coming. Friday evening, 2 days before lunch, Phoenix, Arizona. The little coffee shop smelled of roasted beans and old wood, the kind of comforting aroma that made it easy to forget the outside world for a moment. I sat across from Detective Morrison, a man whose presence radiated calm authority, yet beneath that, I sensed a sharp intensity. My hands fidgeted around my coffee cup, tracing its rim in nervous circles, feeling the cold ceramic burn into my skin. "Mrs. Barnes," he began, his voice steady but serious, "your daughter-in-law Jessica is under investigation." The words hit me like a cold slap. I blinked, trying to absorb them. Under investigation? My voice was small, almost fragile, betraying the unease that had been simmering inside me for months. For what? My hands trembled, and I clasped them tightly to stop the shaking. "Embezzlement," he said, placing a folder on the table. His eyes held mine for a moment, weighty and deliberate. "She's been stealing from your son's company accounts." I felt the air leave my lungs. My heart sank, a physical ache spreading through my chest. I reached out, trembling, to touch the folder. Inside, neatly organized, were documents, statements, spreadsheets, all evidence of a betrayal I could never have imagined. $340,000, missing, over 18 months. My eyes scanned the figures again and again, trying to believe they weren't real. "She's convinced Marcus that the business is failing because of bad investments," Detective Morrison continued. "He doesn't know. Not a thing." My throat tightened. I remembered my son's face in the past few months, the confusion, the worry, the tension I never understood. My heart broke in 2 places at once. For Marcus, unaware, trapped in her web, and for myself, realizing how much time and love had been stolen from both of us. "Is Marcus a suspect?" My voice was barely a whisper, each word loaded with fear. "No," Morrison assured me, "but Jessica has been isolating him from anyone who might expose her, including you." Isolation. The word stung. I realized suddenly why my texts went unanswered, why my calls went ignored. Every message, every plea, every attempt to reach him had been intercepted. He had never known I was sick. He had never known I needed him. Detective Morrison slid a tablet across the table. "Take a look at Marcus's phone records." I studied the screen, and my stomach dropped. Every text I had sent him, the ones pleading, explaining, begging, had been blocked. The app Jessica installed intercepted every word. The messages about my tumor, about the surgery I needed, the fear I had lived with in silence, Marcus had never seen them. "She told him you were angry about the wedding costs and cut contact," Morrison said quietly. His words sank deep into me. I felt the rage begin to rise, unfamiliar and fierce, burning behind my eyes. I had raised Marcus with love and patience, worked my life to ensure he had every opportunity, and now someone had twisted that reality into a lie to control him. I gripped my cup so tightly I feared it might shatter. What? What can I do? My voice trembled, raw with desperation and newfound anger. "Wear a wire Sunday," Morrison said. "Get her to confess. Let her reveal the truth herself. We'll have everything we need." The idea made my hands shake more, but underneath the fear, a strange surge of determination spread through me. I had faced a tumor, surgery, and months of silence. I could face this. I had to face this. For Marcus, for the love and trust that had been stolen from us. I took a deep breath, trying to steady the storm in my chest. The weight of betrayal pressed heavily on my shoulders, but so did a glimmer of hope. I would see this through. I would protect Marcus. I would reclaim the truth. Detective Morrison hesitated, then leaned in slightly, lowering his voice. "There's more," he said. My heart rate quickened. "Jessica has a second family in California, a husband and 2 kids." My hands fell to my lap. I felt the world tilt, the floor beneath me unsteady. How could someone live such a double life? How could Marcus have been so carefully shielded from reality? I wanted to scream, to cry, to collapse into myself and weep for all the time we had lost. But I didn't. I sat up straighter, letting the fury and grief settle into a resolve I hadn't known I possessed. Marcus would see the truth. He would know the lies. And I, Kathleen Barnes, mother, teacher, survivor, would be the one to guide him through the storm. The coffee shop seemed to shrink around me, the sounds of clinking cups and muted conversations fading into the background. I could almost hear my son's voice, hesitant but trusting, the boy I had raised now a man, waiting for the bridge I would build to reach him again. "This," I whispered, my voice shaking, "this changes everything." Morrison nodded solemnly. "It does, but you're ready. You've always been ready. Sunday, we get the truth." I clenched my fists in my lap, drawing strength from the steady rhythm of my own heartbeat. Rage, sorrow, fear, they were all there, tangled and heavy. But beneath it all, I felt the clarity of purpose. I had been pushed to the edge, and now I would stand tall. A mother reclaiming her son and his life from deceit and manipulation. The revelation was staggering, almost unbearable, but I had faced unbearable before. And as I left the coffee shop that evening, the sun setting over Phoenix in a wash of gold and crimson, I felt an unfamiliar but welcome emotion take root. Hope. Hope that Marcus would see the truth, hope that justice would be served, hope that the bond between mother and son could survive even this storm. Sunday would come, and when it did, nothing would be left hidden. Saturday morning, Phoenix, Arizona. The sunlight filtered through the dusty blinds of my apartment, catching the edges of a photograph on the fridge, a picture of Marcus at Stanford. I traced his smiling face with my finger, the familiar ache of longing pressing on my chest. I had to prepare, not just mentally, but emotionally. Today would be the day I set the stage, the day I reclaimed the truth that had been stolen from us. I slipped on my coat and stepped outside, the Phoenix morning warm but calm, the air carrying the faint scent of desert flowers. There it was, the silver Porsche 911, gleaming under the morning sun, parked outside my neighbor Tom's house. Tom, the car dealer who had kindly lent it to me for the Instagram photo, waved from his porch. "Thanks for lending it to me for the photo, Tom," I called, my voice carrying a mixture of gratitude and determination. Tom chuckled, leaning against his gate. "Kathleen, you're full of surprises. What's this about?" I didn't answer. Not yet. I had learned something crucial in the past few days. This wasn't just about confrontation. It was about control, about timing, about letting the pieces fall exactly where they needed to. I was learning to play the game now, to step into a role I had never imagined I would have to occupy. My phone buzzed in my purse, 15 new Instagram comments. I swiped the screen, my stomach tightening as I read them. Most were congratulatory, admiring, curious, but one made me shiver. Jessica. Her comment read, "Wow, Kathleen, treating yourself? Must be nice." I felt a wave of nausea. The fake sweetness of her words was suffocating. The smiley face at the end was like a dagger, a reminder of the manipulations she had woven around my son, the lies that had kept us apart for months. I clenched my fists, feeling the familiar sting of anger, but this time tempered with resolve. I would not let her affect me. Not today. I drove to Patricia Chen's office, the car purring quietly beneath me, a borrowed luxury that felt oddly empowering. Patricia, the daughter of my old neighbor and a brilliant lawyer, greeted me with her usual warm smile, though I could sense the concern behind her eyes. "Patricia, I need to update my will," I said, my voice steady despite the storm inside me. "Of course, Mrs. Barnes," she replied, motioning for me to sit. "What changes?" I took a deep breath. "Everything goes to charity. Marcus gets nothing if he doesn't hear me out Sunday." Her eyes widened slightly, concern flickering across her face. "Are you sure?" I nodded, my lips pressed together. I've never been more sure of anything in my life. Patricia studied me for a long moment, then gave a quiet nod, her hands moving with practiced efficiency over the documents. There was no hesitation in her, no judgment, just support. I felt a small spark of gratitude for having someone in my corner who understood both the legal and emotional weight of the decisions I was making. Later, Detective Morrison arrived. He carried with him an air of quiet authority, a presence that somehow grounded the storm within me. He instructed me to sit while he carefully fitted a small recording device beneath my blouse. "Just get Jessica talking about the money, about isolating Marcus," he said, his voice calm, but underscored with urgency. My hands shook, betraying the tension coiled inside me like a spring. He worked quickly, securing the device, then gave me a reassuring nod. I caught a glimpse of myself in the mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back. Gone was the fragile, worried mother who had spent months waiting by a silent phone. In her place stood someone stronger, more determined, a woman ready to face deceit head-on. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of my role settle onto my shoulders. I was the architect of truth today. Every word, every expression, every subtle gesture would matter. I would draw Jessica out, and Marcus would finally see the reality he had been shielded from for far too long. I left the lawyer's office and walked into the sunlight, letting it wash over me. I felt an odd combination of fear and exhilaration, a tension that sharpened every sense. The Porsche gleamed in the driveway, a symbol, a tool, and a stage all at once. The world was about to change. Then my phone rang. My breath caught in my throat. I glanced at the screen. Marcus, my son. "Mom," he said, his voice tinged with hesitation. "Jessica wants to come to lunch too. That's okay, right?" I froze. My chest tightened, the air seeming heavier than before. This was the moment when everything would converge, the lies, the silences, the manipulations. I realized that today, nothing would be simple, nothing would be gentle. But I also knew, with a certainty I had never felt so vividly, that this confrontation was necessary. Not just for justice, but for love, for Marcus, for me. I drew a deep breath, feeling the pulse of resolve surge through me. "Yes," I said softly, but firmly, my voice carrying the steel beneath the softness. "That's okay. We'll do this together." And with that, I stepped into the day that would change everything, carrying hope, determination, and a heart prepared to reclaim the truth. Sunday, 11:45 a.m., the Phoenician Resort, Phoenix, Arizona. The morning had carried a tension I could feel in my bones. Every heartbeat felt amplified, each breath deliberate, as if the air itself held its breath in anticipation. Tom's borrowed Porsche purred under my hands as I navigated the driveway of the Phoenician Resort. The sun reflected off the polished silver surface, and I felt a strange surge of calm mixed with adrenaline. This car wasn't mine. It was a prop, a tool, a signal. But today it symbolized much more than a vehicle. It represented the stage I had built, the confrontation I could no longer avoid. The valet's eyes widened as I pulled up. "Beautiful car, ma'am," he said, a hint of awe in his voice. I smiled faintly and handed him a $50 bill. Money I didn't have, not really, but appearances mattered today. I had spent weeks planning this, rehearsing conversations in my head, imagining every possible reaction, yet none of it truly captured the fluttering anxiety in my stomach. I could only hope my composure would hold. The terrace doors opened to a familiar view, and there they were, Marcus and Jessica, seated at a corner table with a perfect view of the garden. Marcus looked up, eyes lighting at the sight of me. He rose, a warm smile breaking across his face. "Mom, you look amazing," he exclaimed, embracing me tightly. I felt a mix of joy and heartache. He had missed so much of my life, yet here he was, finally present. Jessica, on the other hand, air-kissed my cheeks with practiced sweetness. "Love your dress, Kathleen," she said, her voice smooth, controlled. My stomach tightened. She was the same woman who had stolen months from my son, yet she wielded charm like a weapon. Marcus's curiosity got the better of him. "So, Mom, tell us about this Porsche." His excitement was genuine, unguarded. I allowed a small, mysterious smile to play on my lips. "Oh, just some investments that paid off," I replied lightly, letting the words float like smoke, enough to intrigue, but reveal nothing. Jessica's eyes narrowed, suspicion flickering beneath her composed exterior. "Investments? I didn't know teachers made enough to invest," she said, a thinly veiled challenge hidden in her tone. I let the first cut slide, letting her probe the surface. Patience was part of the strategy. "Well, I've been consulting for a tech company, educational software. Very lucrative," I continued, letting the lie land effortlessly. Marcus's face lit up, pride evident in his eyes. "Mom, that's incredible. I'm so proud of you." He reached for my hand across the table, and I squeezed it gently, holding on to his presence, his warmth, the connection that Jessica had tried to sever. Jessica leaned slightly, touching Marcus's arm possessively. "Honey, we should talk to her about opportunities," she said, her voice attempting dominance, control, yet I could see her calculating, trying to assert the power she thought she held. Jessica leaned closer, her perfume sharp in my senses. "Kathleen, this consulting, how much are we talking?" she asked, her tone both inquisitive and probing. I measured my words, letting calm control my emotions. "Around $15,000 monthly," I said smoothly, letting her mind work over the figure. I watched her calculations unfold in real time, the quick shift of her pupils, the slight tightening of her jaw. "You know, Kathleen, Marcus and I could use some family support right now," she added, feigning concern, her eyes flicking to Marcus to gauge his reaction. Marcus shifted uncomfortably in his chair. Jess, we're fine. The business has been struggling. She cut him off sharply, and I felt the small victory of capturing her admission through the wire. Every word, every nuance was being recorded. Every slip brought us closer to revealing the truth. I kept my smile neutral, listening, letting the rhythm of their dialogue carry the tension, letting her unguarded statements and Marcus's discomfort illuminate the reality she had hidden. It was a delicate balance. React too strongly, and suspicion could ruin everything. React too weakly, and the moment might slip through my fingers. I had to hold the line with subtlety and precision. And then it happened. A voice loud and clear, cutting through the polite murmur of the terrace. Jessica? Jessica Martinez? Oh my God, I haven't seen you since high school. The words hit like a hammer. Jessica's face went pale, her carefully maintained composure crumbling in an instant. Her hand faltered on the wine glass she had been swirling. A small bead of sweat formed at her temple. I felt a thrill of tension, the air around the table thickening. Marcus leaned forward, his curiosity turning into concern. His eyes darted between us, sensing the shift, feeling the fracture in the facade that had been constructed so meticulously. Jessica's lips parted, as if to speak, but no words came. Her mind raced, every strategy she had relied on, every lie she had layered, now colliding with reality. The woman who had manipulated my son, who had intercepted my messages, who had stolen from him emotionally and financially, was suddenly exposed, her own past threatening to unravel the intricate web she had spun. I sat back slightly, the calm in my chest growing, the careful planning of months finding its fruition in this single moment. The stage was set, the pieces were moving, and now the cracks were beginning to show. In the quiet that followed the interruption, I realized the truth. This was more than a confrontation. It was the moment of revelation, of justice, of catharsis. And in that fragile, electric pause, I understood that everything I had endured, the silent months, the heartbreak, the deception, was leading to this exact point. The terrace air was thick with tension, the clinking of glasses and soft murmurs of other diners fading into a background hum I barely noticed. My pulse had settled into a measured rhythm, though my stomach fluttered like a trapped bird. I could feel Marcus's energy beside me, the unspoken worry in his posture, the way his hand barely grazed mine for reassurance. Then the voice cut sharply through the murmuring ambience, a voice that would shatter carefully constructed illusions. Jessica. Jessica Martinez? Oh my God, I haven't seen you since high school. I turned to see a woman stepping forward, a stranger to this scene, but unmistakably someone from Jessica's past. She had a soft, confused expression, her brow furrowed slightly, and her phone held out as if for verification. Jessica Martinez, right? Class of 2009? Jessica froze, her poised mask cracking for the first time. Her lips trembled, her eyes darted, and she stammered, almost pleading, I think you have me confused with someone else. The woman, Claire, as I would learn her name, pulled out her phone with a deliberate flourish. No, look, here's our reunion photo from 2 years ago. The photo glowed on her screen. Jessica's smile in it was genuine, unguarded, a woman posing with a man and 2 young children. The realization hit me like ice water. The carefully cultivated life she presented to Marcus and me wasn't the full picture. This was her double life, hidden in plain sight, a secret that now threatened to unravel in this quiet, upscale restaurant. Marcus leaned forward instinctively, his voice tinged with confusion and concern. What is this? Jessica's hands went to her face, pressing against her cheeks, her makeup failing to mask the pale, frightened expression that now dominated her features. That's not me, she said, a frantic edge to her voice, though her eyes betrayed panic. I exhaled slowly, trying to keep my own emotions measured. The moment was delicate. I had prepared for confrontation, but this was the human fracture of someone's life, laid bare in real time. I stood up calmly, the authority I had cultivated over months settling around me like armor. "Claire," I said softly but firmly, "thank you. You can go now." The woman looked hesitant, unsure, and I handed her a $100 bill. "For your trouble," I said gently. We had rehearsed this yesterday. She knew how to disengage without drawing unnecessary attention, and I needed the table cleared before the next act began. She nodded and left, and the terrace seemed to exhale along with her. Marcus's hands were shaking as he turned to me. "Mom, what's going on?" His voice wavered, a mixture of fear, disbelief, and the sudden awakening to truths he hadn't been able to see before. I gestured for both him and Jessica to sit. "Sit down, Marcus, both of you. We're going to have a real conversation now." Jessica tried to rise, to escape the tightening web. "I don't have to listen to this. Sit down, Jessica." My voice was steel. She hesitated, then sank into the chair, her posture defensive, eyes flicking to Marcus for support, finding none. I leaned forward, my hands resting on the table, my voice softening just enough to carry authority without aggression. "Marcus, when was the last time you saw my text messages?" He frowned, confusion flickering across his face. "Mom, you stopped texting me months ago. Show me your phone, now." He obeyed, unlocking his device, a small furrow in his brow as he navigated through familiar apps. I opened his messaging app, my stomach tightening at the sight of an empty thread. Every message I had sent, every attempt to reach him during my illness, gone from his view. "Now check your blocked messages folder," I said. His fingers trembled as he navigated to it. The folder revealed 47 messages, all from me. Messages he had never seen, all intercepted by Jessica's manipulations. His eyes widened, scanning the messages, voice breaking as he read aloud. "Mom, I have a brain tumor. Marcus, I need surgery. Please call me." Tears streamed down his face, raw and unfiltered. I never saw these," he whispered, almost to himself. The years of separation, of distance imposed by manipulation, seemed to collapse into this single moment. Jessica's defense was instant, desperate. "Marcus, she's manipulating you. She's trying to turn you against me." She grabbed his arm, but her grip was ineffective, more out of instinct than strength. I placed Detective Morrison's folder firmly on the table, the leather cold under my palms. "Marcus, look at this. These are bank statements from your company." He hesitated, fear and disbelief battling in his gaze. I opened the folder, revealing rows of transactions, figures that screamed betrayal. $340,000 missing over 18 months, I said, letting the words sink in. "Your wife has been embezzling from you." Jessica's face contorted, the veneer of control slipping. "This is insane!" she shouted, voice rising in desperation. Marcus's hands shook as he turned the pages, piecing together the truth he had been denied. The room felt suspended, time stretching between breaths, between the shock in his eyes and the rage barely contained in mine. In that moment, I understood the depth of the damage, how isolation, lies, and manipulation could sever the strongest bonds. Yet here we were, truth laid bare, and the first steps toward healing had begun. And then the final, undeniable twist arrived. A man in a tailored suit approached the table, every step deliberate, his presence commanding the space. "Jessica Thornton, also known as Jessica Martinez, you're under arrest for fraud, embezzlement, and bigamy." Detective Morrison emerged from inside the restaurant, calm, authoritative. The final act had begun. The weight of months of preparation, heartbreak, and courage collided in this single, electrifying moment, leaving no room for denial, no place for deceit. Marcus looked at me, tears still streaming, and I took his hand. The path ahead would be difficult, the wounds deep, but now, finally, The truth had found its voice. The terrace erupted into chaos the moment the officers approached Jessica. The clink of handcuffs cut sharply through the murmur of diners, their conversations halting mid-sentence as phones emerged, cameras capturing every moment. "This is a setup! Marcus, help me!" Jessica screamed, her voice shattering with desperation. Marcus froze in his chair, hands trembling, papers scattered across the table like the remnants of the life he thought he knew. His face was pale, eyes wide, utterly paralyzed by the shock of the moment. Around us, other diners stared, whispers growing louder, the air charged with tension. I kept my composure, though my heart hammered fiercely in my chest. Years of worry, fear, and unspoken pain pressed against me in a physical ache. My fingers tightened around my purse as I spoke quietly to Detective Morrison, voice steady despite the turmoil surrounding us. "Detective Morrison, I have the recording." Jessica's gaze snapped to me, full of venom and disbelief. She lunged, nearly toppling her chair. "You bitter old woman! You couldn't stand seeing him happy." "Happy?" My voice broke, finally, raw and trembling. "Happy? You kept him from me while I had brain surgery. Alone. I fought through the pain, the fear, every single day, and you lied to him so you could steal from his life." Marcus turned toward me, his eyes glassy and searching. "Mom, you had surgery? When?" His voice was a mixture of shock and anguish, the weight of lost time settling heavily on his shoulders. 2 months ago," I whispered, my throat tight. "Mrs. Chen, from next door, drove me home. I didn't want to bother you. I didn't want to alarm you." His voice cracked. "Why didn't you tell me?" I pulled my phone from my bag and laid it gently on the table, opening it to reveal all 47 messages I had sent, every single attempt to reach him during my illness, carefully documented and untouched by time until now. "I tried, baby. Every single day," I said softly, reaching across the table to take his hand. He buried his face in his hands, sobbing, the sound deep and guttural, carrying years of suppressed fear, confusion, and heartbreak. Jessica's final, desperate attempt to manipulate the situation crumbled as she was led away by the officers. Spitting words like venom, she screamed over her shoulder, "He was never enough for me anyway. His little teacher mother, his modest life, I needed more." Her words pierced the air, cruel and precise, each one striking Marcus like shards of glass. The only reason I married him was for his Stanford connections. Marcus flinched visibly at every syllable, his hands trembling as if he could physically push the words away. "That wedding you paid for? I laughed about it with my real husband," she spat, her voice rising into shrill hysteria. "And that pathetic old woman spending her retirement on my party." Her gaze met mine for the briefest of moments before she was finally pulled away. My chest heaved, anger, grief, and relief mingling into a storm of emotion. Something inside me snapped, not in rage alone, but in fierce, protective clarity. I stood slowly, feeling the strength of every year I had poured into Marcus, every sacrifice, every sleepless night. The officers paused, sensing the shift, the unwavering determination in my stance. I stepped forward, my voice calm, steady, yet commanding. "You're right about one thing," I said, my eyes locking on hers. "I am just a teacher. I spent my life helping children become good people. But people like you, you're exactly who I was protecting them from, and Marcus will recover from you, because I taught him better than this." The officers gently guided Jessica away as I turned to Detective Morrison. "Take her away. I'm done," I said quietly, my voice carrying the weight of finality. Marcus remained seated, shaking, his tears still flowing. He looked up at me, whispering through choked breaths. "Mom, there's something else. Jessica wasn't just stealing from the company. She took something from your house, something Dad left you. I froze, a cold dread pooling in my stomach. My late husband's possessions, treasured memories, irreplaceable heirlooms, had been violated. The thought of what had been taken, of what could have been lost forever, settled over me like a shadow. Yet beneath the fear, a new resolve took hold. This wasn't just about anger or loss. It was about justice, restoration, and the protection of what mattered most: the truth, our family, and the love I had fought so hard to preserve. Marcus's hands found mine, clutching with an intensity that spoke of fear, guilt, and a desperate need for reassurance. "Mom, I'm so sorry. I should have seen it sooner." "I know, baby. I know," I whispered, squeezing his hands. "We'll get it back. We'll make it right. Together." For a moment, the world outside the restaurant terrace ceased to exist. The cameras, the whispers, the shocked glances of diners, all of it faded into a background hum. In that quiet space, Marcus and I were just mother and son, two people scarred but unbroken, beginning the slow, careful journey of healing. The path ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in months, hope glimmered faintly, unwavering in its presence. The confrontation had ended, but the reckoning, the true measure of strength, resilience, and love, was just beginning. Back at my apartment, silence wrapped around us like a heavy curtain. The quiet was deafening, punctuated only by the soft tick of the old clock on the wall, a clock that had belonged to David, my late husband, whose presence still lingered in every corner of the room. Marcus sat across from me, his hands clasped tightly in his lap, eyes downcast, unable to meet mine. "Mom, I'm so sorry doesn't even begin." His voice cracked halfway, choked by the weight of guilt and disbelief. "Tell me about what she took first. We'll deal with apologies later," I interrupted gently, my tone calm but firm. I had learned, through months of deception and heartache, that words of sorrow mattered little without the truth of action. He hesitated, fingers fumbling over his phone, before finally unlocking it and showing me a photograph. My breath caught in my throat. There it was, my late husband David's vintage watch collection, gleaming under the flash of the camera. Each timepiece held decades of memories, careful acquisitions, and personal significance. The value alone, over $200,000, made my blood run cold, but it was what they represented that cut deepest. A lifetime of love and careful dedication, gone. Marcus's voice broke as he spoke, barely a whisper. 6 months ago, Jessica asked to borrow your spare key. I blinked, trying to process the revelation. She said, "What?" "She said she wanted to plan a surprise birthday party for you," he replied, tears brimming in his eyes. "You gave it to her." I closed my eyes, feeling a wave of disbelief, anger, and betrayal crashing over me. How could someone manipulate so easily, feigning warmth and care while systematically dismantling the life of the people around her? Marcus continued, voice shaking as tears slid down his cheeks. "She went to your apartment multiple times while you were at work. She took the watches, Mom, Dad's coin collection, even Grandma's jewelry. She sold everything to a private collector. I found the receipts last week in her office." The room seemed to shrink around me, the walls pressing closer, as if I could feel every moment David had carefully preserved, every memory and artifact that had once brought joy and connection, being stripped away. My hands shook as I whispered, "Those watches, David's passion. He collected them for 30 years. I was going to sell them for my medical bills." Marcus's face crumbled further, the grief and guilt tangible. "Mom, how did you pay for the surgery?" His voice was almost accusatory, but tinged with desperation. I stayed silent, the answer bitter and heavy on my tongue. "Mom, answer me. How did you pay for brain surgery?" His eyes, wide and searching, demanded the truth. Finally, I let the words slip, voice trembling but honest. "I took out a loan against this apartment. If I don't pay $85,000 in 6 months, I lose my home. Marcus stood abruptly, pacing the room, his movements frantic and sharp, a mirror to the storm inside him. The Porsche, the consulting job, it was all fake. His voice was raw, a mixture of anger, confusion, and heartbreak. I nodded slightly, keeping my gaze fixed on him, letting the truth settle between us. I needed to see if you'd contact me for money. Or for me. Now, I know. The hurt in his eyes was unbearable, but it was necessary. He had believed in the lies, trusted the manipulation, and now had to reconcile the reality of the love that had truly sustained us. His hands trembled, brushing his hair back as if to physically shake the weight of betrayal off his shoulders. We sank into the silence again, heavier now with unspoken words, shared pain, and the fragile beginnings of understanding. In that quiet, our grief intertwined, a delicate thread connecting us through sorrow, truth, and finally, trust. Then, Marcus's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, hesitated, and answered. The moment he listened, his eyes widened, reflecting a mix of relief and renewed tension. "Mom, that was Detective Morrison. They found the watches," he said slowly, almost disbelieving. "But there's a problem. Jessica sold them to Dad's old business partner, Richard Cole, and he's refusing to return them without a fight." I sank into the sofa, letting the weight of his words settle over me. The path ahead was uncertain, fraught with legal battles and the prospect of confronting someone from David's past who now held our memories in his hands. Yet, despite the fear, a glimmer of hope stirred. The watches could be recovered. Justice could be pursued. The truth finally was on our side. I reached for Marcus's hand, feeling his pulse, his anxiety, his love, raw and unshielded. "We'll get them back, baby, together, every step of the way." He nodded, swallowing hard, eyes brightening with the first spark of determination I'd seen in months. In that moment, I realized that our bond, tested and strained, had not broken. It had deepened, forged by adversity, grounded in truth, and strengthened by the unwavering love we shared. The journey ahead would not be easy. There would be battles, tense negotiations, and perhaps moments where hope seemed to falter. But we had each other. And that, I realized, was more powerful than any deception, more enduring than any stolen inheritance. For the first time in what felt like a lifetime, I believed that we could reclaim not only what was taken, but also the peace, dignity, and joy that life had been trying to teach us to fight for all along. Monday morning felt heavier than the Arizona sun outside the conference room. Marcus had insisted on this meeting with Richard Cole. I hadn't seen him in 15 years, not since the days when David and he were inseparable, partners in a thriving accounting firm, inseparable in ambition and friendship. When David died, Richard had bought out David's half of the firm for pennies, claiming he was helping us. I'd tried to trust him back then, but my instincts whispered caution. Marcus opened the door for me, his hand lingering on mine for a brief, grounding moment. "Mom, it's okay. We can do this together," he said softly. The same gentle tone that had carried him through his struggles, now turned into quiet reassurance. I nodded, clutching my folder tightly. The moment the door opened, Richard walked in. Silver hair perfectly combed, an expensive suit tailored to perfection, and a smug smile that spoke of arrogance born over decades. My stomach turned. That smile, once familiar, now seemed like a knife twisting in memory. "Kathleen, you're looking well," he said, false concern dripping from his words. "Brain tumor, I heard." My skin crawled. I didn't reply. Instead, I focused on Marcus, who sat rigidly across from me, jaw tight, hands fidgeting. "Richard, you have my late husband's watches," I said, voice steady, though inside my blood boiled. "Purchased legally from Jessica Thornton," he replied smoothly. $180,000 worth. I paid $90,000. Marcus's face paled. "They're stolen property," he interjected, voice trembling with anger and disbelief. Richard leaned back, as if the accusation amused him. "Prove it. Your mother gave Jessica access to her apartment. Legally, it's complicated." I took a deep breath, forcing my heart to steady, and turned my attention back to him. This wasn't just about watches. It was about years of betrayal, deception, and stolen trust. Richard slid a document across the table. "However, Kathleen," he said smoothly, "I'm willing to make a deal. Sign over any remaining claims to David's business, and the watches are yours." My hands trembled as I picked up the paper, not from fear, but from a rage I had been holding in for 15 years, carefully coiled like a spring ready to snap. I looked at Marcus. "Did you know your father's business is now worth $12 million? His eyes widened. "What?" I let the truth settle between us, like a storm breaking. "Richard told me the business was worthless when David died. He said he was doing me a favor, buying David's half for $50,000. I glanced at Marcus, his face paling further. "That $50,000 helped send you to Stanford, Marcus." Richard leaned back, a small, almost smug smile curling at the edges of his lips. "Business is business, Kathleen," he said, as if dismissing decades of friendship and loyalty could be so easily summed up. I inhaled slowly, letting the memory of those 15 years sharpen my words. "I told David not to make that ridiculous clause in our partnership agreement." "What clause?" Marcus demanded, his voice a mixture of confusion and rising alarm. My voice turned icy. "That if either partner died, their family retained 50% ownership unless they sold it." Richard shifted slightly, unease flickering across his expression for the first time. "And?" "You told me I had to sell within 30 days or lose everything. You said David had debts I didn't know about. I was a widow with an 8-year-old son. I believed you." My hands clenched into fists on the table. But there was no 30-day clause, was there? The smile that had been so smug, so self-assured, faltered. His eyes darted away, a subtle crack in the armor he had worn for years. "I still own 50% of that business," I continued, my voice rising but measured, every word deliberate. "I always have, and you've been paying yourself my dividends for 15 years. Marcus's jaw slackened, his eyes welled up, a mixture of fury, shock, and the slow dawning of relief. The betrayal was staggering, but now the truth had a weight that could no longer be denied. I opened my folder with deliberate care, the papers inside meticulously organized over the past 3 months. Patricia Chen, my lawyer and old friend, had been researching partnership law tirelessly. I laid the documents on the table in front of Richard. "Patricia Chen sends her regards. She's been preparing for this day for 3 months. See you in court, Richard. Oh, and Marcus, your father's best friend has been stealing from us since you were 8 years old." The air grew tense, almost electric. Richard's face paled, his confident veneer slipping further. His mouth opened, closed, then opened again. But no words came. For the first time, I saw a flicker of fear, of the recognition that his game had ended. Marcus leaned toward me, eyes wide, voice low and trembling. "Mom, we can get everything back?" I reached for his hand, squeezing firmly. "Yes, baby, we will. Every bit of it. We have the law, we have truth, and we have each other. That's stronger than any lie, any deception, any betrayal." Richard finally found his voice, but it was weaker, almost pleading. "Kathleen, we can settle." I shook my head slowly. "No, Richard. Settling isn't enough. Justice isn't about compromise when someone has stolen 15 years of a family's life. You'll face the consequences. And Marcus, you'll finally see your father's legacy restored. Not because of luck, because we fought for it." Marcus exhaled a shaky, cathartic breath. His eyes glistened with tears, the years of manipulation and loss finally colliding with the clarity of truth. I saw the gratitude, the relief, and the emerging strength in him. A mirror of the love, resilience, and determination that had carried me through my darkest days. I leaned back in my chair, allowing the weight of years to finally begin to lift. For 15 long years, Richard had deceived us, exploited our trust, and stolen our inheritance. But now, the story was changing. Now, the light of justice was piercing through the shadows. And in that quiet, electric moment, I felt the stirring of hope, courage, and the undeniable power of truth. No matter what battles lay ahead, we would face them, together, unwavering, and finally unafraid. The Arizona Biltmore shimmered under a golden sunset as I stood backstage, feeling the familiar tremor of anticipation mingled with something entirely new: pride. This was the same venue where Marcus had married Jessica 2 years ago, but tonight the air was charged with a different kind of significance. Tonight, it wasn't about weddings or appearances. Tonight, it was about truth, resilience, and reclamation. I smoothed the folds of my navy gown, the one I had purchased with the first dividend payment from the settlement, a reminder that sometimes small victories carry immense weight. Patricia Chen, ever composed, adjusted the microphone at my collar, her eyes meeting mine with reassurance. "Ready to tell your story?" she asked softly. I inhaled deeply, the scent of polished wood and florals around me grounding me. "More than ready," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. The past 3 months had been transformative. The lawsuit against Richard Cole had settled out of court. $8. $4 million in stolen dividends returned to us. Jessica had pleaded guilty and would serve 5 years in prison. Her other husband had filed for divorce, shattering the facade she had built. Marcus had sold his company, paid off all my debts, and ensured that my apartment, my sanctuary, was secure. The medical bills that once loomed over me had been settled. And tonight, I was being honored with the Phoenix Rising Award for my educational charity, an acknowledgement that my lifetime of work had finally been recognized, not for personal gain, but for the children whose lives I had touched. The curtain lifted, and I stepped into the spotlight. The warm light washed over me as a wave of applause erupted from the 500 people seated in the grand hall. My gaze immediately found Marcus in the front row. Tears streaked his face, his expression a mixture of pride and remorse. Mrs. Chen sat beside him, holding his hand, a quiet pillar of support. I spotted Tom, the car dealer who had lent me the Porsche for the Instagram post, Patricia Chen, Detective Morrison, and even some of my former students, now grown and thriving, who had come to witness this moment. I took a deep breath, allowing the applause to settle into a hush. "Thank you for this honor," I began, my voice carrying across the hall. "But I need to tell you how I got here." I shared everything: the months of silence, the diagnosis, the fear, the fake Porsche, the betrayal, and the gradual uncovering of truth. I spoke of the moments when my son, blinded by deception, had drifted away from me. I revealed the feelings I had kept hidden, the heartbreak of facing a serious illness alone, the courage it took to fight back against those who sought to harm us, and the lessons learned in resilience. I learned that sometimes the people who love us can be blinded, I said, my eyes searching the audience. And sometimes you have to be strong enough to open their eyes, even when it breaks your heart to do it. The audience was silent, captivated by the raw honesty in my words. "My son came back to me thinking he wanted money," I continued, my voice gentle but unwavering. "But what he found was truth, consequences, and unconditional love. The real lesson? Never abandon the people who sacrificed everything for you. Because one day, you might need them more than they need you." I hadn't expected him to join me on stage, but as if reading my thoughts, Marcus stood and walked toward me. The microphone in his hands trembled, his voice thick with emotion. "Mom, can I say something?" I nodded, holding back tears, knowing that his moment of vulnerability was as important as mine. "I was the worst son in the world 3 months ago," he said, voice breaking. "I let a con artist separate me from my hero. My mom had brain surgery alone because I was too selfish to notice. She taught me the hardest lesson I've ever learned, that love isn't always soft. Sometimes it's tough enough to save you." My chest swelled, my heart aching and soaring all at once. I took the microphone from him and we embraced, the warmth of his arms dissolving months of fear and guilt. The audience rose to their feet in a standing ovation, clapping, cheering, some wiping tears from their eyes. I whispered into his ear, "I love you too, baby, and I forgive you." Over his shoulder, I glimpsed the future we had reclaimed together, my new educational foundation, funded by the settlement, dedicated to helping single mothers afford their children's education. Scholarships named after David, carrying forward the legacy of love and dedication. A purpose born from pain, yet blossoming into hope. 6 months later, life had shifted into a rhythm of healing and joy. I drove a sensible, practical new car, Marcus's insistence, and we had lunch every Sunday. He was dating a kind woman who worked at the homeless shelter where I volunteered, someone who shared our values and empathy. Richard Cole's business was under audit. Jessica's letters from prison remained unopened. Some chapters weren't meant to be revisited. The watch collection, restored and complete, sat securely in a safe with a note. "For Marcus, when he's ready." My Instagram post still garnered views, 3 million and counting, filled with comments from people sharing their own stories of betrayal, courage, and reconciliation. I read some quietly, the words resonating in my chest, a reminder that our struggles often echo far beyond our own lives. I looked into the mirror one morning, truly seeing myself. Not just Kathleen Barnes, the sunshine teacher anymore, but a woman who had learned that kindness does not mean weakness, that helping people sometimes includes letting them face consequences, that love can demand courage, resilience, and the strength to endure heartbreak in order to foster true growth. I was 61 now, cancer-free, financially secure, and surrounded by people who genuinely loved me. The Porsche had been a facade, but the lesson served, the one we had all lived through together, was real. It had saved both my life and Marcus's. I smiled softly and whispered to myself, "Sometimes the best revenge isn't hurting someone back. It's showing them what they almost lost forever." And in that truth, I found freedom, peace, and the courage to continue helping others find theirs. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe to the channel for more inspirational tales of resilience, love, and overcoming life's toughest trials.